Welcome to the Mohawk Valley Sportswatch. Thanks for making us part of your Sunday morning here. Good to have Pags on with me this morning. I'm not sure if Coach Medicis will be on. The stat man had a gig last night, so we might have at least one of the guys on with me here this morning. At about 9:30, I'll welcome on one of the producers of 24/7 Sports. Mike McAllister is going to join me at about 9:30 as we'll talk some Syracuse football with Mike as they were on a bye this past week, but they'll play Pitt at Pitt on Thursday night. So we'll talk some Syracuse football. I'll go around the horn and much more this morning. We're going to run through some high school football scores from around the area this week. RFA gets a big win at home over Central Square. They stopped a 2-point conversion late in that game. They hung on to win 28-27. New Hartford, Coach Kramer's team's undefeated. They went up to Carthage and beat a good Carthage team, who I'm sure they will see again in the playoffs. So we'll go through that. Rome 12U Pop Warner's got a big game today. They're at JFK Middle School. They'll play Utica in a playoff game there. The Yankees punched their ticket to the World Series last night. The big bomb home run in the 10th inning by Juan Soto. The Yanks won 5-2. So we'll talk a little Yankees and much more here this morning. So let's run through some scores, some Friday night scores in high school football. Let me just get to my Friday night scores here. We had Institute of Technology over West Hill. West Canada beat Sequoia Valley. I had to double check this score. I know this is 8-man. 70-0. West Canada beat Sequoia Valley. And I know there's some coaches out there that are big fans of the 8-man. I'm not saying I'm against it, but I see some teams like Frankfurt Schuyler. I see West Canada there. I see Weedsport there. They have like 30-something kids on the team. I'm not sure why there's still 8-man football, but I don't make the rules. Janesville DeWitt beat Oswego. Phoenix over Mexico. Oneida beat Camden. Baldwinsville beat Proctor 18-14. CBA beat West Jenny 53-21. As I mentioned earlier, RFA got a 2-point conversion. Big defensive stop late in the game. They hung on to beat Central Square 28-27. Bishop Ludden over Southern Hills. Indian River beat Chittenango 70-30. Homer beat Cortland. Skinny Atlas over Salve. Adirondack beat Howland Patton 46-6. General Brown beat Canastota 34-14. Lowville beat Little Falls 65-0. Cato Meridian over Beaver River 52-20. Dodgeville over Pulaski 66-0. Sherburne Earlville over Jordan Elbridge 48-28. Tupper Lake over South Louis 40-6. Weedsport over Thousand Islands 30-6. As I said, Coach Kramer, Battle of the Unbeatens up at Carthage on Friday night. They won 36-20, so big win for Coach. VVS over CVA 32-14. Mount Markham beat South Jeff 20-7. And Kaz beat Marcellus 47-38. We'll click over to some Saturday scores. And some Saturday scores, we got Institute of Technology beat West Hill. Let's see. Sorry, that's Friday. Let me switch over to Saturday. Liverpool beat Henniger. Now, RFA is going to play Henniger next Friday night at home. The winner of that game will qualify for the Section 3 playoffs, and the winner of that game will go and play at top-seeded CBA. So Liverpool beat Henniger 54-8. Sandy Creek over Hannibal. As the stat man says, where sins go to die. Let me see. We have somebody jumping on, so let me see. I think that's Pags. Pags, hold tight. I'm just reading through some scores, but I got you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, man, cool. Weedsport over Thousand Islands. Let's see. I read that. Let me scoot down here. Waterville over Clinton, 50-26. Grimes over New York Mills. That's an 8-man game, 60. Frankfurt Schuyler, 74-14 over Cooperstown. Morrisville Eaton over Notre Dame, 55-6. Herkimer beat Westmoreland Oriskany, 22-7. And APW, 49-8 over Port Byron. Pags, what's going on, partner?
Nothing. Just thrilled over the Yankees getting into the World Series.
You know, I was watching that game, and my grandma would be so excited if she was here because she was a huge Yankee fan. She always liked watching the Mets. even though I still don't think the Mets get in. I think the Dodgers are the best team over there. But anyways, with the
I agree.
chance of a Subway Series, Pags, this Soto thing at the end of the year, the Yankees got the money to do it. I would give him a blank check and say, "Put your amount." They cannot let him walk away.
Oh, I agree. They got to pay him, and just what he's done for the Yankees. They got to give him the blank check. I agree.
The thing that worries me the most about the Yankees, Pags, and it does every year, how
Yep.
well's the bullpen, the back end, 7, 8, 9. I mean, listen, it's the same thing in football. Offense is gonna win you games. Defensively, late in games are gonna win you championships. Can they just out-hit everybody and score 6, 8 runs a game and win like that?
I don't think so. I think we've seen it in this series. Where you get to the late innings and they got a lead and then they can't hang on to it. Pitching is a concern, and I think especially if I mean both teams, but I mean the Dodgers. I mean you look at this series with the Dodgers and the Mets, and they're both putting up a lot of runs. Um, but I think pitching is going to be an issue, and that's going to be the difference whether or not they're going to win the World Series or not.
Yeah, I struggle at the end because I say every year, they
Yep.
don't have a solid closer. Now, the Weaver kid's been good.
Yeah.
Not a lot of experience, but he's been good. Holmes, I think every night on Facebook, I see everybody saying, "How does Booney keep sending him out in the 8th?"
Oh my God.
But how about Gleyber Torres? Gleyber's been one of those guys in the regular season, Pags, that everybody's saying at the end of the season they'll probably move him,
Yep.
but he's been red hot in this postseason.
Yeah. No. I'm torn with him because you never really know what you're going to get, but he playoff wise he's been doing really good in the postseason. So I don't know. I think they got a good core of guys right now. So I mean I would like to see him back, but I can see how they can part ways with him. But I don't know. I think they're getting hitting right where they should be getting hitting in the middle of the lineup. I mean, you get those guys up that are, the meat of the order, and that's where they're really producing. Um, I don't know. I would like to see him back though. I think he's earned at least another contract, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna be interesting how they create room. I mean, you'd have to think like Rizzo's gone, LeMahieu's
Yep.
gone,
Yep.
Glaber's name's gonna get thrown out there. I mean, they gotta probably make some room for the big contract because listen, the Mets are gonna come after Soto, the Dodgers are gonna come after Soto, all the
Yep.
big markets, right, are gonna come after him. But I really think at the end of the day, when I watch him play, he looks happy in New York. He
Yep.
looks happy playing in that lineup. You're right in the middle of Stanton, who's another one, right? Pegs every year to regular season, people want to get rid of him because he doesn't play a lot of games. He's been red hot.
Oh, he's been amazing in the postseason, and again, he's got a lot of criticism. He gets a lot of criticism every year about what he does in the regular season, but you can't deny what he does in the postseason. If you're gonna be a postseason team, that's the guy you want on your team. And then, I mean, back to Soto, I agree. He's gonna get offers from everybody, but I think at the end of the day, he wants to stay in New York. It seems like it's a perfect fit for him. And why not? Why wouldn't he want to stay in New York? I think it's gonna be a negotiation thing. He knows he's gonna be able to get as much money as he wants. And can the Yankees pony up? And listen, we know the Yankees can pony up and pay it. It's just a matter if how long they want this thing to go on. I think just give him the money, be done with it. Just give him what he wants, negotiate the contract and be done because you're going to get other folks coming at you. And the problem is with the other folks, especially the Dodgers and the Mets, they're going to try to get you. They're just going to try to get the Yankees to pay as much as they can. So it's going to be a game that they're going to play too. So we'll see. I mean, but that's definitely one that I think a guy you want to lock up. No questions. No questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're locked right in the middle with Judge there, Stanton there, I mean, that 1 through 6 in that order, and
Oh,
even
yeah,
sometimes the bottom half, right?
yeah,
7, 8, nine's been pretty good too.
yeah. They have. They
Is
really have.
Judge has been really good during the regular season, and Judge will probably win the AL MVP, you would think, right?
He,
He'll win it in the
I would
AL.
think so. I would think
Ohtani will win
easily.
it. Ohtani will win it in the NL for
Yep.
sure. And the thoughts of getting the Dodgers and the Yankees, I mean, marketing and money, I can't
Oh,
imagine a better situation for
it's
baseball.
exactly what Major League. I mean, Major League Baseball is sitting in a good spot right now. I mean, whether it's the Dodgers and the Yankees or the Mets and the Yankees, they can't go wrong. I mean, you can't go wrong with a Subway Series. But I agree to have L.A. and New York. It's a dream come true for Rob Manfred.
Pegs, how about Judge though? I mean, you got to talk about Judge's postseason. He hasn't been great.
Yep.
He's had a couple home runs, a big home run the other night in the loss, where I thought there after he hit the home run and they went back to back, I said the Yanks are going to win this game. But what do you
Yep.
make of his struggles in the postseason?
I mean, you can't expect the guy to be Superman. I mean, look at the season that he had. I kind of was asking myself throughout the season. I'm like, this guy is having a one of a kind season, a phenomenal season. When's it going to end? Is he gonna struggle in the postseason? And exactly that's what you saw. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know why just haven't had such a strong season, and then he struggles in the postseason. I can't imagine it's anything different that he's seeing in the postseason that he wasn't seeing in the regular season. Sometimes you like, especially in football, you see, you know, coordinators catch up with a guy, and then eventually they don't have the season that they were having early on. But it's baseball's different. I mean, if you figure it out, the guy you figured him out in the regular season or the postseason. I don't know. I think it's part of baseball. You're going to have struggles, unless he's trying to do too much and he's making adjustments to the swing that is hurting him. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a matter of he's it's just a little bit of a slump, and hopefully he gets out of it and he can do well in the World Series. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if
Well,
there is an answer.
I think as we all know, the Yankee fans are really, really tough no matter who you are.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
of course.
I always think of course, Jeter, who's my favorite Yankee next to Donnie Baseball, and I sit here and I say to myself, Jeter was so big in big moments for the Yankees in the postseason,
Yep.
and Judge has been so good in the regular season. He's obviously a fan favorite for the Yankees.
Hmm.
But do you think people will look at him any different if he's, let's say, come the World Series, he struggles and goes 1 for 20 something,
Yep.
or hits 1 something in the postseason? You think Yankee fans are gonna I don't see him ever turning on Judge,
No,
but
I don't think they'll. I do think that the criticism is going to be there because Yankee fans are they're going to criticize you, good and bad. Um, but I don't think I don't think when it's all over and said and done, if he struggled in the postseason, I mean, if he doesn't get a World Series title, maybe. But I think if the Yankees go on to win the World Series and Judge struggles in the postseason, I don't think you're going to remember him as a guy that oh, he always struggled in the postseason. I think the numbers that he's put up for this team, for this franchise already. Um, I think he's already solidified his stake in the Yankee lore, I guess. But yeah, would it help him to go to the World Series and shine? Of course. I think it only makes him, uh, his legacy even stronger. But I don't think. I mean, you're gonna get criticism. Don't get me wrong, because us Yankee fans will criticize you for
yeah,
everything. We're New Yorkers. That's what we do, right? But I do think they'll forgive him for his postseason woes.
I think the other thing I look at too is I always look at the
Oh,
Yankee
you there?
pitching and yeah, can you hear me? I don't know if I lost
You
Pags or
there?
not. I can see him.
Oh,
Um,
can't hear you.
I can see it though, Pags. I'll have to see if
Mm.
Pags can get this thing straightened out, but I can hear him. But I think the one thing with me too, as I say it every year, is not just a Yankee bullpen, but I always say the Yankees starting pitching. Rodon was really good, in game one against Cleveland. I thought he struggled a little bit last night, but looked okay. Garrett Cole, I don't think had his A stuff. But the Yankees just happened to score 6 or 7 runs, and then Clark Schmidt, and then I think I heard Nestor Cortez might be back for the World Series, so that'll definitely help the Yankees. But I just feel like I say the same thing every year, and they don't go get any pitching. I still think the Yankees got to figure it out. Let me see if I can get Pags back. You there, Pags?
Yeah, I'm here. I couldn't hear you anymore.
Oh, there you are. I got you. I heard you. You just couldn't hear me.
Oh,
But Pags, I was saying as I still talk about not just the bullpen for the Yankees, like Rodon, I thought was really good in game one. I thought he was decent last night. Garrett Cole, I don't think had his best stuff in game two for the Yankees, but they scored 6, 7 runs. Clark Schmidt, and then I just heard Cortez will be available for the World Series. The starting rotation's not the greatest. It's not one of the Yankees'
no.
better rotations, and here they are in the World Series because of offense. What do you make of the rotation?
it gives me heartburn every time they go out there. It seems like, because I keep saying to myself, I don't have confidence in in the starting rotation, but at the same time I don't have confidence in the bullpen. So it's like, once you get to the later innings, just like, all right, if they can give us, it's crazy to think, but like if you get to the fifth or sixth inning, you're like, okay, maybe we're gonna be all right. But then you get that feeling of like, all right, now we're into the bullpen, and now what are we gonna get? Um, that's the big issue. I think pitching is a huge, huge question mark for the Yankees, because you don't have that guy that you go in and he's going to give you 7 innings, and then you're gonna turn over to the bullpen and you'll be okay. It's like there's going to be a struggle most likely, um, with the rotation, because it seems like every game that we've seen, whether it's whoever it is, they hit a bump in the somewhere during the innings. They struggle to get through it. Maybe some runs score, and then eventually they settle down, and then they get to the bullpen, and it's the same thing. It's like they get a couple innings in, or they struggle right off the bat. So I think that's going to be the key to this World Series. I mean, I don't know if it's the Mets. I'm not too worried, because I don't think their rotation is as strong as the Dodgers, but I think with LA. I think the advantage is going to be to them if they make the World Series as far as pitching. I don't think by any means that the Yankees rotation is going to be a plus for them here. I think it is going to be a slugfest. It's going to be whether or not they can score more runs than other teams, but hopefully, you can get a couple games out of these pitchers, that they have a good outing, because that's what they can, if they can get a good outing, and they can, that's the game that they got to win. I mean, if they have a good outing, hopefully they can put up some runs and win that game. They got to take advantage of that, because if they have good pitching, they got to win that night.
Well, I think it's going to set up well, right? We'll get Garrett Cole for game one.
Yep.
So that sets up well. Again, he didn't look great in game one against Cleveland, but you got to win Garrett Cole's game, and you got to get a really good outing by Carlos
Right.
Rodon. At least the Yankees are going to get home field, so it'll be at Yankee Stadium to kick things off. I think the Dodgers get through. I think the Mets and the Tigers. I was going to say the Tigers because it's my brother-in-law's team. Were the two hottest teams the second half of the year in baseball, and I
Yep.
tip my hat to the Mets. I'm not a huge
Oh yeah.
Mets fan. I don't root against the Mets. If the Yankees weren't in it,
Yep.
I'd be pulling for the Mets. I'm a New York guy. So I think they deserve a lot of credit. I just don't think they can win two more. But as I was saying last night, I was at a Halloween party last night, Pags. I'm not even going to tell you who I was dressed up as.
Oh God.
I'll have to send you the picture. So my
Oh
wife was
God.
supposed to be, I'm going to get sidetracked here, but that's okay. So my wife was supposed to be Dolly Parton, and
Oh
I was
boy.
supposed to be Kenny Rogers. So I'll have to send you the picture. But my wife's something with her costume, so she ended up going as Lainey Wilson, the country singer, and I was
Oh
still Kenny
jeez.
Rogers, the riverboat gambler last night. So that was me. But anyways, I was talking last night at the Halloween party,
Oh man.
and I was saying to myself, I said, the last time I was or the last time it was a Subway World Series, I was there. I was at Fordham for the last Subway World
Really?
Series, and it was obviously it was fun to watch. But has there been a hotter team other than the Mets in baseball the second half other than the Tigers? I mean, they've played some really good baseball here down the stretch.
No, they've been really fun to watch. I mean, they're a fun team that you can tell they just kind of believed in themselves, and they felt that, it doesn't matter. And even the way this series has gone, I mean, you've seen some of these games, and they get blown out, and I immediately think, all right, this series is over. I thought the Mets, they won a game, and okay, great, and then they bounce right back after getting blown out, and they end up blowing out the Dodgers. They're like, they're just no quitting them. That's why, like, I don't think they have enough to get to the World Series. But again, at the same time, the way this team is playing, they just don't care. So it doesn't matter to them if they're going to get blown out in a game. That's why I think they still do have a chance to get there. Um, but then I do think if they can somehow, I mean, obviously, if you can get to a game 7, anything can happen. If they were able to win it and beat the Dodgers, fair game. I mean, I think they can win the World Series. I think,
Yeah.
the Yankees are a team that, it can go either way. I guess I don't even know what to expect with the Yankees, when you get to the World Series, because it's like, you got to continue to see the good hitting, that continues. I mean, I think you're gonna still see the pitching. Though I don't think the pitching is going to change. I think you're still going to have struggles, throughout the World Series. But yeah, no, the Mets have been like phenomenal to watch, and really came out of nowhere. They kind of kept plugging away all year long. Um, So good for them. It's been fun to watch, and I think it's created a buzz in baseball and even in New York. I mean, I think it's always fun to see the Yankees and the Mets because the Mets are always the stepbrother, or whatever you want to call them. So it's fun to see the back pages of the Post and what they say about both teams. So it's good for baseball. It's good for New York.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the button when you say just get it to a game 7. Just
Right.
get it there and anything can happen because we've seen some crazy game 7s over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, like, once you get to a game 7, everything gets thrown out the window because both teams now are going to put everything out on the table to win that game, and who knows? And I think as coaches, like, we don't look at games as most teams or fans look at a series and say, oh, you're down 3-1. How are you going to win? It's impossible to win. Not impossible. It's difficult to win. 3 games in a row to continue this thing. That's not how it works, right? We all know that it's one game at a time. So it's easy to win the next game, and that's how you got. I think that's the approach the Mets have taken. It's not about winning, 2 more games. It's about winning the game in front of you, and then once you win that game, win the next one. So, um, we'll see. I mean, I guess I'm cheering for the Mets because I think that's a better opponent. I think the Dodgers are a lot better team and probably a better team than the Yankees are at this point. So I'd rather see them play the Mets. But again, I want to see a good World Series. So hopefully whatever team gets there will the Yankees will come out victorious. I hope.
So, Pags, on a separate note, we'll be talking to Mike McAllister, who was on the radio with us numerous times to talk some SU football here in just a
Yeah,
little bit. And Syracuse off to a good 5-1 start.
very good.
And as we talked about earlier in the year, the schedule we said was favorable for Syracuse, wasn't a really too tough of a schedule. It's really too bad because I think they should be 6-0. They should have never lost the Stanford game.
Right, I agree.
But it'll be a big pit game. But I'm trying to go back. I'm like looking through the scores. I watched a little bit of football yesterday. Again, I was at a Halloween party watching the Tennessee game, and then the Texas game went on. I was really surprised to see how bad Texas played in the first
Oh,
half last night.
unbelievable.
Um, so it's like Cody's the Ducks fans, and he's already putting in the Oregon,
Oh
the
yeah.
Ducks, and I got to give him credit. I mean, they did beat Ohio State, but I
Yep.
still think, and I know people are gonna hate me for this, I still think the Buckeyes are the best team in the country, even though
I do.
Oregon
I
beat
do
them.
think they're pretty
I
good too.
I just think they're, off. They got to get it right defensively because the Buckeyes are going to score.
Mhm.
They have to find a way to stop teams in big games because they haven't. I thought Tennessee played a really good game against Alabama. Now Kalen DeBoer, everybody in Tuscaloosa wants to throw Kalen DeBoer out of Alabama because he's dropped 2 games and he's not Nick
Yeah.
Saban. Alabama's not very good. Jalen Milroe is really struggling over the last 2 to 3 weeks. He's not a thrower.
No, he's
Um,
not.
but I'm just looking around the college football and I'm saying this 12-team playoff's going to get really interesting here
Yep.
late because there's a lot of good teams. I don't think there's a lot of great teams this year,
Nope.
Pags.
No, I think you have about 4 or 5 great teams, and then everybody else is thrown into the mix. And I think you're going to have a situation where any of those teams can beat anybody, and even the great teams, I think, can get nipped early on. I mean, you talk about the great teams. I mean, to me, I throw Ohio State in there. I would throw Georgia in there. I throw the Ducks in there. And then I mean, even Texas. I know they lost, but I think they're still up there.
Yep.
Um, so beyond that, I mean, there's probably a couple other teams that I probably missed, but um, I don't know. I think it's going to be a wide open playoff, and I think it's going to make it pretty interesting, honestly. I do think, like, you're talking about the Ducks a little bit, Cody's Ducks. They, as much as we love to give him heat about his Ducks, they look really good. They
Yep.
look really good, and they're probably going to jump into that one spot now. And the rest of the schedule, we got kind of going back and forth on text chain. Is pretty favorable to them. I mean, I think Michigan is probably the hardest match for them left on the schedule. But they got a couple other teams that if they don't be careful, they can maybe lose to, but they shouldn't lose to. I mean, they're better than all the teams on their schedule, so they should finish out the season and be okay. But with Michigan, you never know. I mean, they don't look good this year. They don't have a They don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, they look bad.
They look bad. But I think still, I mean, it's still a big game. You're still playing Michigan. Anything can happen. But I do think Oregon's probably going to finish out and win the rest of their games, and we'll see. I mean, they got enough, but again, it's one of those situations where I don't know. You play a team like Georgia, you play a team like Ohio State. Those are big. And I know they've already beaten Ohio State, but I don't know. I'm not sold on any team right now.
I mean, it's so weird because I mean, with this 12 team now, you have like Penn State's undefeated. The Penn State Ohio State game here in a couple weeks is going to be huge for the Big Ten because if
Yep.
Penn State beats Ohio State, which James Franklin can't win a big game to save his
No,
life. If
he
there's
needs this one.
anybody, he needs to beat Ohio State.
Yep.
But let's just say he beats Ohio State. Ohio State's got 2 losses in conference play. Penn State and Oregon are basically in the driver's seat to play for the Big Ten championship. So Oregon would get in. Penn
Yep.
State would, you'd think, would have to get in. I
Yep.
don't know what that does to Ohio State potentially with 2 losses. I still don't think
I,
Penn
I
State
still
gets
think a
beat up.
two-loss Ohio State gets in.
Well, I would too. I would agree with you. But I
Mm.
think as far as the Big Ten goes, that would drop Penn State out. You have like Miami that's undefeated. I don't think Miami's as good as people think. I think
No,
offensively they're really good. I don't think they can stop anybody. So I'm not sold on them. Listen, Georgia, you can't go against Kirby Smart. Half against
no.
Texas to basically shut out Texas the way they did in that first half. Credit them. And then how about this? Army, Navy are both undefeated.
Yeah, I was listening to that because they were talking about something where like they gotta play after the bowl selection or some kind of selection, not bowl selection. I can't remember what they were talking about, but they could end up both being in this thing.
Well, and they're gonna probably play each other twice because remember,
Right,
they're in a
twice. Yep,
conference now.
yep,
So they'll play each other at the end of the year like they always do, and then
yep.
they could play each other for the American, Conference,
Right.
championship
That's
game,
what they were talking about. Yeah, yeah, yep,
which would be awesome. You
yep.
got BYU in the Big 12, right now that's undefeated. It looks really good. And I'm gonna throw a crazy, crazy scenario. I don't think this is gonna happen. What if Prime wins out at Colorado and goes 10-2?
No,
With 1 loss in conference play, you don't know what's gonna happen at the top of the Big 12. Not
no,
saying, I'm
no.
just saying there's
Uh,
a chance.
there's a chance, but no.
Utah's
I
not very good. Cam Rising, the kid, the quarterback who I feel sorry for, who's played like 8 years of college football. They just granted him a 9th year, but he said he's all done. So Utah's not very good. They're
no.
gonna play Cincinnati next week at home. They should beat Cincinnati.
Hmm?
Texas Tech on their schedule is pretty good. Texas Tech got destroyed last night to Baylor, who Colorado beat. So I'm just saying, I don't know if it'll happen, but a 10-2 Colorado with a 1 loss in conference play, maybe they play for the Big 12 title. I don't know, just a thought. Because you guys
Yeah.
know I love Coach Prime. But there's so many good teams.
There are a lot of good teams, and I think that's this whole thing of the NIL. This is it's created some parity now because now you can go, those bad teams that were bad before, now they can go out. It's free agency. Go out and get what you need, right? And that's what everyone's done. So everybody. There's a lot that we can debate all day long about what NIL has done to the college landscape, if it's good or if it's bad, and you can make the argument both ways, right? I mean, the good part of it is, now you have needs and you can go out and fill those needs pretty quickly and get the guys that you need. And all of a sudden, these teams are, that's why we have so many good teams. That's why so many teams are where before, if you had a weakness in your team, it's probably a couple of years or so before you get the guy there to help you. Now it's instant. It's like you have a need, you go fill it. Which that's been about, I guess, the good part about NIL. But also there's been a lot of negative about it, and we can talk about it all day. We can talk about what happened with Virginia, right? I mean, coach leaving and that whole situation. I mean, and he made some good points on the way out. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about that today, but um, yes, that's why you're seeing all these teams that are good teams now. I mean, the great teams, the top five or so teams that are always out there, they're always going to be good. But now you have so many more teams that are good, and I think are going to make this playoff that more interesting because we were talking about this before when we were talking about the playoffs before it started. That you're gonna end up having blowouts in these playoffs. I don't think that's the case anymore because these teams have gotten so much better so quickly with this NIL stuff that anybody really in that 12-team playoff now, I think is going to be able to compete with pretty much anybody. I mean, are you going to have a blowout here and there? Possibly. But I think these games are going to be good because no one's going to want to play anybody because they're all going to be pretty well matched up teams.
I would agree.
So
You
so
know,
we'll
there.
see. I mean, the big boys are always the big boys, right? They always there's always going to be teams that they're going to be better than the other ones, and they're at are a different level. But again, like we talked about Game 7, right? Once you got to play, you can scheme it and you can talk about on paper that Georgia's better than most teams, but these teams have caught up to them where it's just one game. It's not a 7-game series. It's one game, and these coaches are good at coming up with defensive packages and schemes to stop the guys. They're gonna hurt them, so that gives them a chance.
While we wait for Mike, there's a couple teams, I guess, that I'm surprised not many people are talking about. One is going to be LSU because I think people wrote off Brian Kelly earlier in the year.
That was
Um,
one. That was me.
I think LSU slowly sitting there with one loss.
Yep.
And then I think the other coach that I've been a big fan of for a lot of years, his name gets rumored for a lot of big jobs, and his name got rumored for the Michigan job years ago, was Matt Campbell in Iowa State. This is a guy who is the all-time
Yep.
winningest coach at Iowa State, which they were a really, really bad program for a lot of years. He had some really good years, and then Pags, like the last 2 or 3 years, they struggled. People were ready to run him out of, I'm trying to think, Iowa State is it in Ames? Um,
Yeah, I think his name's yep.
Trying to think, but he's done nothing but win. They're undefeated. They're in the top 10. And then I think the other team that I'm really, really surprised at, and I think people would say the same thing, is Dabo Sweeney. I mean, Clemson is rolling through
Quietly,
the
right?
ACC
Yep.
quietly. Cade Klubnik, the quarterback, has looked fantastic. They're running the football. Now I know they laid an egg to Georgia, but many teams lay an egg to Georgia.
Right.
So you
You
can't
expect that.
really throw that one out there. But as far as the ACC goes, you would have to think right now Clemson is in the driver's seat to not only get to the ACC championship game, potentially win the ACC championship, and Dabble's right back in a playoff again. So I think those 3 teams to me so far have been a little bit of surprise because, again, we all know how Dabo Sweeney says he doesn't go into the transfer portal. He's a big fan of developing players, and everybody, including myself, said, Dabo, you got to adapt because if you don't adapt,
I agree.
you're not going to win a lot of games. And here he is just winning games in the ACC.
Yeah, I that's an interesting one. I do think Clemson is a team that really, like you said, no one's talked about them, right? You haven't really heard much about them at
Nope.
all, and they're just going off winning games, winning games. But to me, the question with them is, okay, yeah, you're probably going to end up winning, you know, being in that championship game. But are they where are they as far as when we talk about that level of great teams and good teams? Well, I'm not going to put them in the great category. I'm going to put them in the good category. But I'm probably going to, record wise, they're going to be in the higher end of the good. But I think at the end of the day, I don't know if they're the higher echelon of good. I guess is what I'm saying. I think they're winning games and they're doing well. They're winning the games they should be winning, which is that's all you can do as a team. But I don't know if they can compete with the upper echelon of college football right now. I mean, I think he's winning the games that he should be winning, and he should be winning those games. I mean, he's Dabo Sweeney. He's put together a good program over there at Clemson, and a couple of years ago we were talking about a Clemson dynasty, and then they kind of dropped off a little bit. So I don't know. I think they should. It's hard because when you talk about the top 12, like we already mentioned. I mean, there's probably five or six teams that are like you said are the upper echelon and the great teams, and then you probably got what 6 spots left for the other teams. There's a lot more than 6 teams, and that can fill those 6 spots. And where does Clemson fall in that six? I mean, yeah, you can make the case that they should be there. But will they? I don't know. I mean, there's so many. Well, it's crazy because when we talked about the college football playoff, we were, some people love it, some people don't, and we were saying, oh, 12 teams is too many. But now it's like the more and more, and we said this when this happened. When you get to 12 teams, we're gonna say there's 15 or 16 teams that should get in. And there's going to be teams that get at the bottom of the 12 that they get left out. I think that's exactly what you're going to see this year. I think you're going to see you're going to have probably maybe three or four, even maybe even more than that, a handful of teams that you're going to say that are on the outside looking in, that you probably can debate whether they should get in over somebody else. And Clemson will probably be those one of those, unless they can take care of business and punch their ticket. So
Well, and of course,
we'll see.
we'll be talking about teams 13 and 14 like we do in March
Exactly.
Madness, right, that don't get
Exactly.
in. Two other
Yep.
teams I wanna throw out there, and one of them I've been really impressed with. Number 1, the job Mike Elko's done at Texas A&M, having
Yep.
them in position right now to, potentially get a playoff spot, I think is, Mike Elko's been a winner everywhere he's been. And the
Yep.
other one I'm really, really surprised at, if you remember, Curt Cignetti, the coach at Indiana now, who was at James Madison and took James Madison to a um, different heights. He won at
Yep.
James Madison. He said in a press conference, he says, "All I do in Google me." This is a guy that walked into Indiana, and this guy's turned into one of my favorite coaches because we all love the underdog, right, Pags?
Yep. Yep.
We all do. This guy went Indiana, and all he heard was, "You can't win here.
Hey,
Nobody wins here."
no, I would agree, right? I mean, if you when you mention Indiana, do you think football? Not at all,
No.
right? Um,
And to see now people can say, and I'm gonna be one to say this, you still gotta win games no matter who's on your schedule. Like Syracuse to me, and I
agree.
think you would agree, Medicis would agree, their schedule's cake.
Yeah, yeah. I
Their
mean, and
schedule's
actually, their
easy.
schedule looked a little tougher after we saw some of the team. I mean, when you
Yeah.
first looked at the schedule, you're like, yeah, this is a real easy schedule. But then there were a couple teams like Miami that's been playing well, and a couple other ones that I can't remember who they are right now, but turned out to be better than we thought they were. So that the schedule ends up being a little tougher than we thought. But still, we talk about Syracuse, like, and again, it's great to see Syracuse playing the way they are. It's great to see them relevant again. But I do think, like, they're winning the games that they should win. Right? These
Mhm.
are games that they should win. I don't think there's really been a game on their schedule um, that was, that they weren't the better team. I mean, even the Stanford game, that was one where you looked at, you're like, okay, as you go through the schedule, and you add wins and losses, maybe that was the one that you originally gave them a loss. But again, that's a game that they should have won. At the end of the day. So yeah, you got to win those games that you should win, and that's what he's doing at his school. He's winning the games that they should win, but they've won some big games at Indiana. I mean, they just beat Nebraska, right? And I know Nebraska's not what they used to be, but
Well,
that's for
I was just on the verge of saying, and I still think people are saying, "Is Nebraska back?" Matt Rule's gonna win at Nebraska. There's no doubt in
yeah,
my
he
mind. They've
will.
looked a lot better. But man, oh man, I'll tell you, if you would have told me that Indiana would hang 56 on
No way,
Nebraska,
right? No way.
I would say there's absolutely no chance.
I
So,
agree. Even the worst Nebraska team, I would say, I would never have picked Indiana to hang
no.
50.
They played really, really bad, but, credit Indiana. But again, going back to Cignetti, like, he comes in and all he hears is, "This is a basketball school. Nobody's
Yep.
won here in football. You can't win here." And a lot of people, including myself,
Yep.
said, "Why the hell would you leave James Madison in football,
Right.
who now, is a Power 4 team that, Bob Chesney, the coach from Holy Cross, is the head coach there now, and, they're doing well. James Madison, to me, would be a better program than Indiana, except Indiana's in the Big Ten, which is
Right.
now one of the conference other than the SEC, and this guy's got Indiana ranked after this weekend. They might be a top 10 team,
Which is crazy.
which who
It's
would
great.
ever have thought that? But
No,
when his conference, you go back and listen to it, he says, "All I do is win, Google me."
that's the
And I'm like,
best.
"Who the hell is this guy?" I mean, I know who he was,
Right.
but yeah, 100%, you can't control the schedules, you gotta go out and play it, and,
Right.
again, he can't do anything about that, but I think he gets the Buckeyes. I think I saw Indiana, on Ohio State's schedule. I think Michigan plays them, which I don't think Michigan can beat my modified team right now, in
Yeah,
football.
what
They're
what
that bad.
happened to Michigan? I mean, how do they go from where they were? And I know they had a lot of guys on their roster last year that were NFL guys, but how did they drop to where they dropped so
Well,
quickly.
I think a couple things with Michigan. I think it shows that, when JJ McCarthy was there, Jim Harbaugh, and I said it before the year started, so I didn't want people to think just because I was a Michigan fan that I was gonna state the obvious. I said before the season started, Pags, and you would probably remember this, that I thought win or lose, Jim Harbaugh was done at Michigan and he would go to the NFL. Now, with that said, they lost the entire offensive line. They lost basically their entire wide receiver core. They did return obviously some guys, Will Johnson, Mason Graham. They returned some guys on the defensive side. But it really showed me that Harbaugh went all in with the quarterback. Because how they cannot have a quarterback at Michigan ready to go is
Right.
beyond me. Tuttle is absolutely horrendous.
Or he can't hit anything.
Um, the Warren kid is absolutely horrendous. The kid that they have that's gonna probably play next year is the Jaden Davis kid that was a five-star recruit. But I said this yesterday to my brother-in-law, and I've said it the whole year. This coaching staff looks so far in over their head, it's unbelievable. They look like a deer in the headlights. And I was one of the ones that I thought
Yep.
Sharon Moore deserved the job for what he
Me too.
went through last year.
Yep.
But I'm gonna be the first one to tell you, I think at the end of this season, they better open up a coaching search.
You think they will?
I don't know. I don't know if they will or not. I mean, you heard all those talks during the season that Sharon Moore
Yep.
didn't sign his contract, and people were like, "Well, how can the head coach not have a contract?"
Right.
Maybe this was the plug and play after the Harbaugh, era is over. I just can't believe how bad they look. Like, Ohio State's gonna put 70 on Michigan.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what I
it's gonna be
don't.
really
That's
bad.
what I said to myself. I don't understand how they've had the. I mean, I get like there's transition and then things are going to happen, but and you lose a lot of players. But for them to look as bad as they have, and like you said, for me the biggest thing has been the quarterback. Like, I mean, he can't hit an open receiver if his life depended on it.
No.
So again, the question is like, how do you not have a guy ready waiting after McCarthy leaves? I don't know. I mean,
You know, Pegs, how many times have we said, like, and I was gonna bring up Notre Dame because I love Marcus Freeman. I think he's one of the best young and upcoming coaches in college football who recruits really well.
yep.
They never have a quarterback.
No, they don't.
Like, Sam
No.
Hartman was okay. Dave
The 1 year
Clawson, Wake
fix, right?
Forest, the 1 year, these coaches, like, Michigan didn't go in the transfer portal to get anybody. Like, Syracuse, credit Fran
Right.
Brown, went out
Because
and
you
got
can
Kyle McCord.
right. You can see like and that's the thing, like now that you see where Michigan is, it's like, well, we talked about that was the last season for Harbaugh, but like for him to leave, I mean he left basically left the shelves empty when he left, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, is that why he left? Did he know that he didn't have anything, there, or did he not care because he knew he was going to the NFL, so he's not recruiting as heavily as he's going to because why put the time in
He
when you
didn't
know?
care. He didn't
I,
care.
I think
He
that's
he
what happened, right?
he simply
Because
didn't care because this is if I was Jim Harbaugh, I say this: "You brought me back to Michigan to win a national championship. We
yep,
won a national championship." Now people can still say they cheated, but I'm
yeah,
gonna tell you they just had better players
I agree.
because if you watch that Connor Stalions thing, he talks about there's still some Big Ten teams and other teams in the country that are still doing it. So we won't
Everyone's
go
been doing
there.
it.
They've all
Let's
been
face it,
doing it.
right? They've all been doing it,
But
and in a way, it's part of the game too. So whatever, we
But
can
he
get
took
into that whole
but
discussion.
Pegs, he Harbaugh took all his coaches. He took Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator. So
Yep,
now everybody thought that, okay, Wink Martindale comes in, part of that Baltimore Raven tree.
yep,
Michigan's defense looks like Don Brown's defense years ago when Don Brown played all this man coverage and couldn't cover a crossing route, and Ohio State put seven. Like, they are bad on all
yep.
fronts.
They are.
Donovan Edwards, who I love, looks completely lost running the football. He looks like he's never ran the football ever for Michigan. So, to me, I think Harbaugh knew he was going. He took all his coaches with him.
You
He
do,
didn't
yeah.
develop anybody behind JJ McCarthy. It's very apparent that he didn't do that, and he
Yep.
went all in on a season and said, "Win or lose, after this year, I'm out. Whatever happens at Michigan after that,
Which
you
is
can."
which right, which explains why there's really nothing there because again, any program would have the next kids coming up ready to go, unless you're all in that season and you don't care what's behind you and you just stop. I think that's if that really, I mean, again, to get into his head and really was that what he really did? Who knows? But if he did, I mean, that's you know, it kind of it goes to the character of Harbaugh. He's a great coach, but if that's really what you did to your alma mater, that's not cool. That's not cool. But at the same time, it's up to the rest of them. It's up to the rest of the Michigan coaches who are there now to build the program up. And I just don't think, like you're saying, I don't know if they got the right guys there to do that.
The only thing now with Michigan, I think it sets them back, and most people are going to disagree with me when I say this because it's Michigan and like it's Michigan, Ohio State, and these big
Yep.
Power 5 programs that don't rebuild, they reload.
Yep.
They're in rebuild mode to me because
They're-
this season's going to be a really, really tough season for them. So they're in rebuild mode to me. So Pags, we're going to bring Mike on. We got
Yep. Go
Mike
ahead.
jumping on now. So let me pull him
All right.
on with us here. If I can get there, let me just get there.
Can look right there.
There he is. What's going on, Mike?
Hi guys, how are you?
Good, buddy. Thanks for jumping on with us. Appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
Sorry to pull you out here this morning.
No, you're fine. I promised my son I'd go to a card show this morning, and
Where's it at?
At the New York State Fairgrounds.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Sports cards, Pokemon cards, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Well, I won't keep you, Mike. I don't want to take up family time today, but
No, you're good.
we're talking some college football, Pags and I, and we'll talk a little Syracuse here to start, and I'll throw you a few curveballs as we go. But Syracuse off to a great start, and as Pags and I were talking, I was one that said before the season started, Mike, when I saw the schedule, and maybe you're the same way, I said this is really a schedule where Syracuse might be able to win 9 or 10 games and really have a shot late in the year to compete for the ACC championship.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too that when you looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season, the game at NC State looked like the most difficult on the schedule, and then as the year has gone along, it's clearly not been the case, right? NC State's not nearly what everyone thought they would be, and so that made that game a little bit more winnable. And yet you're still surprised, even with the 5-1 start, that they lost the game against Stanford. Stanford's not good at all.
Yep.
And so Syracuse really is a play away, or perhaps not playing about as bad as they could for an entire game, from being 6-0 and being a top 20 team and making Thursday's game against Pittsburgh a top 20 matchup. But that said, it's hard to complain at 5-1. And you look at the rest of the season, Virginia Tech, perhaps in the preseason, people thought a little bit more highly of than what they've been so far, although they have played a little bit better lately. BC has kind of been up and down.
Yep.
Cal has been very up and down. Hasn't won a conference game yet, although I think they've lost 3 or 4 games by a combined 9 points, if I'm remembering that correctly. So every game on here is winnable. You get Miami, who's been really good, but they've also had a lot of close games, and you get them at home. So if you take care of business, that could almost be a de facto play-in game to the ACC championship, which, if that's what you end up with, regardless of what the result ends up being, I think you feel pretty good about where this thing is going as a Syracuse fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, a lot of the talk has been on Fran Brown, how people were questioning and say, can't wait to see what he does in game, right? With in-game adjustments and all that. And obviously everybody knew about how great of a recruiter he was and a lot of that staff that he brought in with him. Where would you grade Fran Brown so far?
Yeah, I think you got to give him a pretty high grade, something like B+, A-. It's hard to give anyone like an A or an A+, in my opinion, only 6 games into their career, because that almost leaves no room for improvement. But even week 1 against Ohio, the end of the first half, they perfectly used time management, used their timeouts defensively to give the offense time, and then they drove down the field and scored a touchdown right before halftime. They've been infinitely better from that standpoint than the previous coaching staff was. In-game penalties are down a little bit. He's used his challenges pretty well. Hasn't done it a ton, but in the spots he has, it seems like it's made a lot of sense. So I think you feel pretty good about how he's developing and getting used to things as an in-game head coach, because it's certainly the first time he's had to make a lot of these decisions.
Mike, a couple concerns I have so far with Syracuse through the early going here. And one of them, for me, has been the lack of the run game. Right now, I think, going back to my numbers, only 20% of their offense has been coming on the ground. And I'm really surprised because I mean, listen, Kyle McCord come in, I definitely thought it would be 60% pass, maybe 40% run, but I didn't think it'd be this low as far as the run game goes.
Yeah, me either. It's been a little bit better in the last couple of games. I feel like they've tried to get LaQuint Allen the ball a little bit more. The other thing to keep in mind is when they do a lot of those swing passes or those short passes to the outside, those are basically runs, even though they
Yep.
go with the stat sheet as passes. So that skews the ratio a little bit. But my biggest thing, especially in the first 3 or 4 games, was the inability to just run the ball straight ahead between the tackles with LaQuint Allen, or even when you brought in Will Nixon or Yassine Willis. That's been a biggest, and I think where it really hurt them was against Stanford. They couldn't get anything on the ground at all in that game. I think they had like 20-something yards as a team, and it just destroyed their ability to give any semblance of balance, which basically allowed Stanford's pass rush to just sort of tee off on Kyle McCord, and that was an issue all game. It's been better since then, but I think this offseason they might look to perhaps grab a guy or two from the portal in to shore up the offensive line, because it's got to be better, especially going into next year when you don't have Kyle McCord, because
Right.
you don't know who the quarterback's going to be. And assuming they're not the same level as Kyle McCord, which it would be tough to find someone who is, to be honest with you, you're going to have to rely on that ground game more.
And Mike, speaking of Kyle McCord, how good has he been?
Everything that the most optimistic Syracuse fan could have hoped coming into the season, he surpassed even that. I was asked in a couple of different, interviews and stuff that I've done before the season, do I think Kyle McCord has any legitimate shot of breaking Syracuse's single season passing record that was set by Ryan Nassib over a decade ago? And I said, no, I didn't think so, because I thought they were going to run the ball enough that he wouldn't have the opportunity to put up those type of numbers. And boy, has he proven me quite wrong every single game. He's been phenomenal. Now, I know there were a couple of games where he had a couple of interceptions, a couple of passes he'd like to have back, but other than that, I mean, poise, leadership, clutch plays, making the plays against UNLV in overtime and at the end of regulation to get that win. Completion against Georgia Tech on the 3rd and 10 to Aronde Gadsden when things seemed to be unraveling that sealed that game. It's hard to really complain much about what he's been so far.
Well, I think Ohio State fans would probably say they would have rather had him than Will Howard against the Ducks, but he's been fantastic, and I'm happy to see somebody like McCord having the success he's having at Syracuse. So, and I think he's got a legit shot to break that record, Mike.
I think he does too. If he keeps putting up the same kind of numbers that he has so far, he's going to shatter it. And I'll just say this about him: if he had the same numbers but was at Ohio State, the discussion would be who's the favorite for the Heisman, him or the running back from Boise State. But because he's at Syracuse putting up these numbers, he started so far off the radar because it's Syracuse and not Ohio State. That hurts his candidacy a little bit. But if he keeps putting up these numbers, it's going to be hard to ignore, and I think he would deserve an invite to New York City.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So, Mike, the last question I wanted to ask is, so we saw Texas go down last night, which I was surprised to see the first half that they played last night. They made it a game late in the game, but I was still surprised. Who's the best team in the country?
I think it's Georgia, to be honest with you. Now, they're not going to be ranked number 1. I think Oregon will be. But what I saw from Georgia, what they did to that Texas offensive line, I think Texas has the best offensive line in college football.
Agree.
And Georgia dominated them. And so I'm thinking if they go up against other teams, who's going to have the offensive line to the level of Texas that's going to be able to stop that Georgia defense from dominating them? I know they lost to Alabama. That game kind of was, one of those things where it just sort of got away from them. They came back, but, Bama's pretty good, even though they've got a couple losses. I think Georgia is as talented as anybody, or more so, top to bottom of the roster, both sides of the ball. Their quarterback, Carson Beck, is starting to come into rhythm a little bit last couple of games. So if I had to pick a team that I'm going to bet money on to win the national championship, Georgia's going to be the team that I feel the safest with.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe that some people were saying if Georgia lost that game, they were writing the Bulldogs off. But I agree with you, Mike. I think Georgia's clearly made a statement last night.
Yeah, it wasn't just that they won; it was how dominant they were. That Texas offense had been rolling everybody, and the first half they couldn't do a single thing against Georgia. They had a couple of sparks there in the second half, but Georgia sort of absorbed that, got back into the type of defense they had been playing, and then shut Texas down. So I think they're as good as it gets in college football. Now, like I said, Oregon's going to be ranked number one. I think any of those teams that are basically in the top 5, top 10, maybe outside of Penn State, because I'm not really a buyer on Penn State right now. I think everyone else could beat Georgia if Georgia's not at the top of their game. But if everyone is playing their best football, I think Georgia's the best team.
Well, Mike, I would agree with you, man. Listen, I appreciate you jumping on this Sunday morning. Go enjoy the card show, and we'll do it again soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You got
Thanks.
it, buddy. Yeah, Pete, my mic's getting. Did you hear a little
Yeah,
static?
your mic was getting a little scratchy.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it was getting a little scratchy, but it doesn't sound like it is now. So I
No,
don't
it's
know.
better
That's
now.
weird.
Yeah, it's better now.
But yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about it, right? I think Georgia, the way they played and the way they done. And listen, everything Mike said is 100% on.
Yep.
To me, Texas had the best offensive line in the country, and I don't know what happened. I think they were just shell shocked in that first half of how well Georgia came out and played. Texas made a game out of it, but he's right. I
Yep.
mean, for people last night to say if Georgia lost, the dynasty, like the Kirby Smart era, is over, you're crazy.
Crazy, right? That's what I was looking at. I was looking at the game last night before I went into it, and I said, you know what? Here's a game that obviously Georgia can lose because you're playing Texas. But to me, like that, this is a game where whether Texas lost or Georgia lost. I mean, it's not somebody's got to lose, right? But then you look back and you see, I didn't think it was going to hurt Georgia if they lost that game, but then you look at how Texas lost. They got dominated, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference. It's if that game was a close game and they both played well and one team lost, okay, someone's got to lose. But the way Texas lost and the way they got dominated, shows you how much better Georgia is. And Georgia's. I mean, again, we all know Georgia's legit, but they are. I do think they are the best team in the country. I mean, even to me, Georgia, and I hate to say it but Ohio State, I think Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country, despite the loss, right? I mean, you talk about Oregon. Oregon looks good right now. Oregon looks very good. I just don't. They're going to be number one, but I still think I still put Georgia over Ohio State and the Ducks. I think they're just better talent wise, and then you look at what they did to Texas last night. Because like you said, that offensive line for Texas was the best in the country, and they didn't look good at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can say Georgia last night has probably the best win in the country so far this year, right?
Yep.
With their win last night. I mean, I think when
Yep.
Georgia beat or when Alabama beat Georgia, you could have said Alabama probably had the best win, and then you get Oregon's win over Ohio State. Well, they could have had the best win, but if Will Howard was smart enough and got down, they kicked the game-winning field goal.
Right.
That's how good that game was. So again, I think just that's the
But
world of college football that we're living
right,
in right now.
and that's the thing. Like when you have these teams that we're talking about the best of the best here, and they're playing each other, they're beating each other up. It's like, well, someone's got to lose that game. And when you're playing Alabama and you're playing Georgia, someone's going to lose that game. And a loss to Alabama is, I mean, it's a loss to Alabama, right? But now that you're seeing it, okay, now it's a 2-loss Alabama team. Okay, maybe they weren't as good as we thought they were. So now that loss to Alabama looks a little bit worse. But again, these teams are losing to the top tier teams in the country. So it's not like they're losing to teams that they should be beating. So when you're playing the best, you're gonna lose some of those games. But it's about how you look in those games. And again, the comparison I make is last night, Texas and Georgia. It's like, well, Georgia didn't just beat Texas; they dominated them. That's the difference, and that's what shows that Georgia is probably the best team in the country. I mean, I know Cody's gonna deny that and say and argue with us about that and say, how can you put them atop the Ducks, because the Ducks are playing pretty good football right now, and yes, they are. But we'll see at the end of the day who the last man standing is. Kind of like what Mike said. If I had to put my money on right now, I'd put my money on Georgia. I mean, how can you go against Georgia right now?
Well, and like we said, it's hard to put your money on Penn State until James Franklin can win a win a big
Yeah.
game. But if
And
Penn
I
State
really
can
like
beat,
Penn State. I think, I know Mike wasn't as high on Penn State, but I really like Penn State. But you're right. Like, if you had to put your money on it, I'm not putting my money on Penn State because of that, because of what coach has done there over the years and hasn't been able to get past that big game. But I don't know. I think this year might be different. But at the end of the day, I still don't see Penn State, raising the national championship banners only because Georgia's out there, right? I mean, and I think there's some other teams out there that are better than Penn State, but let's see what Franklin can do. I mean, can he get them over the hump? He's got a good team this year. This is the year, if any year, this is the year to do it. But again, is it just Penn State is winning the games that they should win, right? We talked about that, like winning the games that you should win. Penn State has won the games that they should win. Now, when they go play Ohio State, that's where you really got to show if you can do it, if you can get past the hump. We'll see. Because if they can't, then we're not talking about Penn State.
no, I agree, and we'll see. They're going to get that opportunity. They usually play Ohio State pretty well,
Yep.
and that game's at Happy Valley. So I was trying to get tickets to that one, but I couldn't get them. My wife and I are actually going to Ohio State and Purdue down to Columbus. We're going to be
Listen,
down there for a
for
couple
for
days.
a Michigan fan, you sure attend a lot of Ohio State games.
Well, last year I got to say for my birthday, she got me Michigan Penn State tickets, which was when they were both ranked in the top 5. It was
Yeah.
it was an awesome game, and we got to see the big noon kickoff crew that was there. So it was really cool.
Well,
So
no better year to go see a game than the year they win a national championship, right?
yeah, and also that's the game where Jim Harbaugh came off the bus and got the news he wasn't the head coach.
Oh yeah. Yep.
In the game where they ran it like 28 times in a row. Like that's the game I want to go to. I know people think I'm crazy because they want to see somebody throw it all over the field. I want to see the game where you pound it just 28, 29 times a game, which by the way, come to a modified game, Pags, and see us just pound the ball like 20 times a game. Because that's what we do. But anyways.
Listen, I was at the Washburn game yesterday because I was calling the game. I got to do the PA for them again, and Washburn and Herkimer ran. Listen, I love Westmoreland, but man, they look bad right now, man. They're a struggling program right now, and I know coach is doing everything he can over there, Coach Firini, to get them, in a better position. But um, it's tough right now in Westmoreland. I know your family has a little tradition over there with Westmoreland, with Dad being coach over there, but they're trying to build up that program, and I got faith in Coach Firini. I mean, the kids are well coached, but yesterday penalties galore. I mean, they were just you could just see Coach pulling his hair out because they had opportunities to score and they were right at the goal line and a couple times and just 3 or 4 penalties in a row. I mean, just not I don't know, but it's tough. High
Well,
school football stuff.
I think what's tough around high school football, and I was kind of saying it when I was reading some of the scores out, is I see a lot of these lopsided scores, and I see
Yeah,
the 8-man football. I've never seen an 8-man game. Everybody tells me you got to go see it, and a
I
lot
won't.
of
I won't.
a lot of coaches will argue with me, Pete, and I know a few of them have over the years and said it's good football, and I'm not denying it's
That's
not
probably good.
good
I'm sure it's
football.
good football, but
But here's where I have my problems with the 8-man, is I see, like, West Canada, Frankfurt Schuyler that have, like, 30-something kids on the team.
yep.
Why are you 8-man football? Can I ask that question?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, isn't there a rule that like you're supposed to go back? You can only do it for if you have so many kids. I don't know what the rules are. I thought there was something where if you,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
don't I've been out of the rule stuff for a little bit of time here. I'm not really sure what it is. I thought you can only do it for so many years, and
Yeah,
if
that's what
you
I thought too.
actually if you won it, you had to get out. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know the rules. But, I see, like, West Canada. I see, like, Weedsport. I think Frankfurt
Yeah,
Sky like
if you have the numbers, I don't understand why you're doing 8 man
like,
because you shouldn't.
those are historically, over the years, really good programs.
Hmm.
Like, when I was at Sequoia, Weedsport was one of the best programs in the state. Frankfurt Schuyler, really good program,
Yep.
for a long time, and I've just seen, like, 8-man, and it's like, "What?" And then I see these scores,
Right.
70-6,
Right.
70 to nothing. It's like, "Alright, so you're telling me," and I know schools that have it would be, "Okay, am I gonna play 8-man or not play at all?"
Right.
I I don't know. I mean, like, I can see, like, New York Mills is the smallest school in the state. I can see them playing 8-man because they probably have 15 kids on a team, 20 kids.
Right.
Whereas if they're in regular football and they have a couple guys go down, they can't finish a season out because they don't have enough guys.
Right.
Right? Even your alma mater at Notre Dame, that's
Yeah, no,
8-man.
I mean, if you don't have the numbers, if you don't have the numbers and you want to offer something for the kids to play, then yeah, okay, play 8-man. But I
100%.
agree, I agree with you. If you have the numbers, you shouldn't be allowed to go to 8-man. If you have the numbers, play the game the way, because to me it's like it's a different sport, right? I mean, yeah, you can call it football, but it's different, right? It's
Yeah, I
not the
mean,
same.
you gotta coach it different. I mean, you gotta do a lot of different things, with it Sequoia. I mean, I hate to see Sequoia where I was at, where we got the thing going in the right direction, and now they're 8-man football, and I just saw they got beat 70-0. I'm like, "Boy, oh boy,
Yeah.
high school football has come a long ways."
Oh man,
Over the years. But anyway, that's probably another topic for a different
it
show.
is.
But well, listen, Pete, we're out of time. I appreciate jumping back on. Good to have you back on, buddy. Good to
Yeah,
talk with you
it's good to
again.
get back and hopefully we can get into the groove more and start doing this every weekend again.
If we can't do it on a weekend, we can always film something, during the week and
Yep.
air it whenever. So if there's a night that works for you guys, I'm all for it. If we can get the gang back together
Yeah, sounds good.
and do it. So appreciate you coming on, man.
Before we jump off, though, I want to get your opinion on what you think about what happened in Virginia and Coach
Tony
getting out
Bennett.
of coaching.
Not surprised. You could see it in his face that, like Coach K, like Jim Boeheim, like a lot of these guys, that
Yep.
the way sports is now, it's not the way that he knows the game. He said it. He's old school. He's not
Yep.
saying that the kids shouldn't get paid.
Right.
He completely didn't say that.
He
He
just
said
thinks it needs to be regulated, and which I
Yep.
totally agree.
I think you
But
need a general manager, you need a commissioner, you need to add some rules and stuff for it. But now when you look across college basketball and you see these giants, the Boeheims, the Roy Williams, now throw Tony Bennett in there, Coach
yep,
K, you're gonna see more of these big time coaches getting out.
I
Nick
agree.
Saban got out because of that, and I'll tell you what, Nick Saban's pretty damn good on College Game Day.
He's
I
really
didn't think
good.
I'd like him, but
He's
he's, like,
really
turned
good.
into, like, one of my favorite guys on game day. But Pete, going back to Tony Bennett is one of the good guys in
He
college
is.
basketball, and, to watch his press conference, I watched the entire conference, and to see the tears in his eyes, you can tell he really doesn't wanna get out,
Right.
but he knows that as long as that NIL with no rules out there, the games passed him by. It was tough to watch, but I don't disagree. I think you're gonna see more.
Yeah, and I'm just surprised. I guess the biggest thing, I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised that he walked away pretty much 2 days. What, 2 days before practice started? I that surprised me. Like, if he thought about this, then how come not walk away before, instead of going in right into the season, right before the season? That was the one thing that got me a little bit. Is like, these guys are ready to go and go into the season, and now they don't have a coach. You
The
know?
only thing I think it did for him with doing, I think it's a couple weeks before they start, not 100% sure,
Yeah.
but it also doesn't give the university time to open up a coaching search.
Right.
So in my eyes, if he thinks one of his assistants should have the opportunity,
Yep.
maybe that's why. I don't know, because to me, again, I agree with you. Somebody as classy as Tony Bennett, if he knew this is how it was gonna be, why didn't he do it earlier? Maybe he did it for one of his guys on the
You're
staff
right.
to
I
say, "You
think
know
that
what?"
now that you mentioned that, that's probably I did read that somewhere that he always said that once he's done coaching, he wants to have one of his assistants take over the program. So maybe it was planned to do it this way so that one of his assistants can have a shot at it.
But the only thing that opens up, I think it opens up for those guys to get into the transfer portal because your
Yeah,
coach left. So we'll have to see if anybody leaves, but, hats off to Tony Bennett. Hopefully, we'll see him on TV. I think he's
I think he will be
fantastic.
on TV. I think he'll be really good on TV too.
Yeah, no, I do too, for sure. So,
So,
all right, man.
all
Listen,
right,
good chatting. Keep in touch this week, and, hopefully we'll do it again soon.
we'll do. All right, have a good
All
weekend.
right, man. You too. So it's nice to have Coach Pags back on. It was nice to have Coach Mike McAllister back on. As I say, Coach, but Mike McAllister of 24/7 Sports had a little mic problem when Mike was on. Mine was a little choppy in and out. But thanks to Mike for coming on and talking some Syracuse football, and thanks to Pags for coming on talking some sports with me today, as always. So on behalf of the entire crew here at the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch, Coach Pags, Coach Medicis, the Statman, and myself. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll see you again soon here on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch.